Ready?
Hello and welcome to Rhythm and Pixels, a video game music podcast. This is episode 31-2, and we're your hosts. My name is Rob Nichols.
And I'm Pernell.
And every week we listen to great games, great music. We listen to great video game music from all consoles and all generations. I had a weird brain spasm. I don't know what happened there.
We listen to bleeps, bloops, and occasional blobs.
I don't know about the blobs. I think the blobs were around the Pong generation. Yeah.
Burp, burp, burp. Pong was a great game.
But every week we pick a topic and we pick some tracks regarding that topic, and we just kind of dive into it. And if you're just catching up with us, or if you've been listening to us for a while, we do have a Patreon. We are a Patreon supported show. Go to www.patreon.com/rhythmandpixels. And you get access to cool stuff like monthly live shows and prequel episodes. And this week we talk about zombies and biscuits.
And actually, that's a good segue into something I've been thinking about in the last couple of days. Though it's going to get postponed a little because bills come in the mail. Medical bills suck. But so obviously we appreciate everyone who listens to this show. And we appreciate our patrons, and we appreciate, just having that community. So something clicked in my head, and I'm actually going to go through with it. Logistics is going to suck, but we'll see how this goes. So if you wrote in a track for the gift-giving Patreon episode last month and provided a testimonial for that product, I'll give you $20 for a game. Specifically for a game, though. So it has to be like credit towards a game. So, and I did the math, so I know how many people there are and all that good stuff. So, what you'd have to do, if you were one of those people, write into the show and just let me know and say what console you'd prefer to get the credits on. International people, I might have to do something different, because I swear it's impossible to find anything regarding how to give people money that are not in America in eShop or PSN or Xbox credit. Yeah. So
let us know, or we'll end up reaching out to you.
Yes.
All right.
So basically, just to reiterate, if you submitted a track with a testimonial for the gift-giving Patreon episode in December, because that was, gift-giving, tracks that you'd give to others and stuff. Just a feel-good vibe, So just saying, thank you for listening to our show and being awesome people. We greatly appreciate you.
And also, I'm thinking we should do some kind of contest or something for some of these old T-shirts. We have some Rhythm and Pixels classic T-shirts that have never been worn. We have an original that my nephew made.
I remember that shirt.
We have a misprint of the Run VGM. And we have a classic. And
I still wear my classic, too.
So, the classic with us in our little pixel form that we don't really use anymore. So we'll come up with some kind of cool giveaway for that stuff, because I've been having these T-shirts sitting around thinking about it, and this is the year to do it. 2022,
the year of the thing.
Past 2 years we screwed up. We're gonna do this one.
We're gonna get it right.
We're gonna get it right this year. All right, so this week we're talking about our top games of 2021, and you know how many games I played last year?
We can count them on one finger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in my case, I've played an absurd amount, and yet somehow I feel like it wasn't particularly hard to narrow it down, and yet I can also say that it can change at the roll of the dice. Thankfully, there was a Hey Poor Player thing a couple weeks ago where we took votes on our favorite games and we had to write about them. And I feel like my top games that I voted on didn't change much from then to now. So that's a good thing. But I stand with the belief that 2 weeks from now, I could have a completely different list easily.
I wonder if anything... Okay, so for me, since I played Persona last year, I was bad at video games. This year, this is the year I'm going to play more than one.
You could play 2.
I mean, if you listen back to our show, if you're an avid listener of our show, we've been doing this for 6 years. I've talked about games that I've played.
I just tease you about it. You ever played that detective game with Christy at one point with the boat you were in that village with the huts.
Yeah, that was a good weekend.
that was a fun weekend.
But so what I'm doing is I'm picking games that came out last year that I would like to play this year. Games that I knew about or maybe didn't know about that I really want to get into. And actually, 2 of these I'm definitely going to play. 2 of the other ones I don't think I'll play because they're on Switch or they're on PC, which I don't tend to play on my PC.
Hey, Switch could happen.
It could happen. I'm trying to. So my brother-in-law said, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting my kids a game console. What should I do?" And I said, "Switch.
Give them a Switch.
Switch." And he's like, "Are you sure? Like, are they gonna be able to play what they want and then also have family friendly?" And I said, "Yes, all of it."
No, I mean the real question, because like what when he says play what they want, is like what do they want? Like,
I mean, like the kid, they're obsessed with Apex Legends. That's on
Switch.
That's all they play.
That's all Mark plays.
And I think they want to see them like kind of broaden their horizons on games. And I think Roshan, but he's not in the house anymore. He plays Rocket League. But all that stuff's on Switch. And I was like, yeah, but then you also get like all the cool Mario stuff. You get all the cool indie stuff.
There's a lot of indie stuff.
And if you don't want it on the TV, they can pick it up and take it with them.
Just tell your brother, if he isn't sure, say Pernell has all of them. And somehow he's down to his last 100 gigs on a terabyte card on his Switch. Like the Switch. And I mean, I have the PS5 and I play the Switch more than that. Like, people in the game community hear that and think I lost my ever-loving mind. I'm like, no, I just really prefer the Switch. Like, I know it's not as powerful. I don't care. I prefer the Switch. If the Switch was as powerful as the PS5, I would just be happier. I mean, like, the power isn't important to me.
It isn't, right? Like, the games themselves don't all require like that much processing power. So the ones that do, great. That's awesome. You know what?
But I saw people complain recently about Disgaea 6, which up until 6, most of them started on PlayStation systems, and then they got ported to other things.
I remember that.
But Disgaea 6 came out exclusively on the Switch, and people were like, "Well, wake me up when you put it on a powerful console like the PlayStation or something."
Pick me up inside. Yes.
And I'm there thinking, like, first of all, even when they were talking about how PS4 had like Disgaea 4 or whatnot, and they were like, PS3 had Disgaea 4 and PS4 had Disgaea 5, and they're like, the power of the systems, look what they could do. And I'm like, it's still 2D sprites getting wild animations.
Yeah.
They could totally work with that on these systems if they wanted to optimize it. Heck, Disgaea 5 is on the Switch, like right now. Like, Disgaea 6 was like pulled back as far as like a lot of people say for graphics because they went with 3D models for the first time.
Oh, wow.
But I have no doubt that they put their mind to it and put the work in. They can make it look totally good on the Switch without needing to go to the PS5. The PlayStation, they would not come close to utilizing what the PlayStation 5 could do for a Disgaea game. They would not. I play NIS games all the time.
I wonder if it's just an arms race now, where it's like, okay, the PC can do this, right? And you can upgrade your PC infinitely.
Even the PC ain't doing it.
So no, I mean like the Sonys and the Microsofts, like they're selling these consoles, and it's just like, okay, well, everything that you want can run on our last system, but we got to sell a new one.
That's exactly what it is.
So what are we going to do?
That's exactly what it is. Like, these systems,
we hit a wall. Not a wall, but we've hit like a event horizon of video game consoles.
Like, I'm sure someone listening can hit me with the whole, well, this system does anti-aliasing better or handles blacks better. I don't know.
If you want ray tracing in your 3D game, that's great. But you know what is like, not every game is going to be able to have a development studio big enough.
Most can't. Like, think of it like this, right? Like, I look at a lot of these games, like Limited Run's putting out, and heck, even a lot of games I'm just seeing in general hit like the market, like a lot of the indie games that hit. Because for those paying attention, indie games are making up the majority of console libraries these days.
All of my picks are indie games.
So it's something to be said about seeing a game like, I don't know, heck, I mentioned it a lot. Let's say Astalon, right? Astalon Tears of the Earth. There's something to be said about when they're like, you can buy Astalon Tears of the Earth on the PlayStation 5. And it's like, why? Like, I don't care. Like, if it's the only system I can play it on, so be it. But it's an 8-bit style game on a PlayStation 5. Who cares?
Your counterpoint. You can say like, oh, they want you to spend more money to buy these games again. counterpoint, these are all indie games, and I want these indie developers to have my money.
Oh yeah, don't let's not get it
Which is
twisted
great.
here. Like,
but at the same time, it's like it's not necessary.
That's the point I was leading towards exactly. Like
finally, everyone's catching up to me. Finally,
like I have no qualm. Like, I mean, the majority of the games I play and own are indie, flat out.
Yeah.
But with that said, I can say that I love these games and play them while also admitting that if it weren't for the fact that they just have to be on the newest system, they wouldn't need to be on it. They could be on an Xbox One or a PS3 in some cases.
This is a good segue for my first track.
Oh,
okay. So I dabble in game development.
You dabble?
I like to make little things. I use a program called Game Maker Studio, and it's a great tool for 2D games. Some people have done 3D stuff in it, but it seems like a pain in the butt, so I never do it.
Side note, before you go into your track, you should look into, is it called Pixel Maker? I think it's called Pixel Maker. A lot of games that are coming out on Switch lately are referred to as the Pixel Maker series. Give you some context, the most recent, like the guy who did La Mulana just released a game on the Switch that he did in Pixel Maker Studio. And I'm enjoying it so far, though I'm having concerns because obviously it won't be La Mulana. There's just no way.
Pixel Maker Studio is a drawing program designed specifically for making pixel art images on the 3DS.
But somehow these games are popping up on the Switch now. So maybe that's how it started.
Maybe that's how it started. I'll have to look into that. So maybe it's not that. But anyway, so the first game is going to be a game called Chicory.
Oh!
A Colorful Tale.
That was one of the top games on the Pay-Per Player, too.
Oh, was it? So, anyway, I dabble in game design and game development on Game Maker Studio, which is a great multi-platform program. I do it on the PC. They changed their annoyingly, the past 2 years, they've changed their model to be subscription-based, so it costs money now.
Or just to have it.
Just to have it. Before, it was like 1 fee and you just had it. And now you got to pay for it every month or every year. I'm grandfathered in, fortunately, because I've been using it for so long. But anyway, so while I'm trying to learn about using that and looking up tutorials to figure out how to do this or that, they have a list of games that have used Game Maker Studio.
Chicory was one of them?
And Chicory was one of them. They actually wrote an entire like little blog post on the official Game Maker website on like how they did certain things and how they approached it using Game Maker Studio. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then I was like, oh, shoot. It came out last year. And the soundtrack was by Lena Raine. Mm-hmm. Lena Raine of...
your game, Celeste.
Celeste. Thank you.
That's your game.
That's why we're a team. Because I'm not going to remember these names so easily. So anyway, this is really great. So we're going to listen to the track Do the Impossible, which is a little bit of an anomaly on the soundtrack. It's a little bit more up-tempo. But it's called Do the Impossible from Chicory, A Colorful Tale, composed by Lena Raine. And we're back. You've been listening to Do the Impossible from the game Chicory, A Colorful Tale, music composed by Raine. Wow.
That was a pop. I like that track very much.
It's really, really cool. So something about like the I guess the motif or the leitmotif throughout the track, that do-do-do-do-do from the piano gets played out through. It sounds so much like she would do in Celeste. I don't, maybe it's like her signature sound. But it's really, really upbeat with some kind of minor keys, so it still sounds kind of off a little bit, but really exciting and really hopeful.
So I have a bit of a general understanding of what the premise of this game is, so I'm curious, like, what drew you to this one as one of your games that you want to play this year?
Well, first of all, like the art style is adorable, and it seemed like really cute and sad.
I can dig that.
So, yeah, you're like this little dog person in this world, and then all of the color is taken away, and you have this magical brush that is trying to color the world in. And most of it's a puzzle game where you're trying to figure out what needs to be colored in within these specific sections of the world. Does this need to be green? Does this need to be red? And then the people you talk to kind of tell you about what they need. But then also, like, there's this like story of artists and depression.
Oh yeah, because like the bit that I know about the game is that the color disappears because the person that's responsible for providing color to the world just says, "I don't care anymore." Just straight up, like, I'm tired of this. So when your character goes and meets them and is like, "Hey, what's wrong? Can I help? Can I help out?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, knock yourself out," and just gives them the brush.
Oh,
so. From my understanding of a friend of mine who told me about it, it deals with a lot of imposter syndrome type stuff because this person is now having held this massive weight of responsibility on their shoulders, and they have to accept the consequences of that, and they don't know if they measure up. Like, it's an interesting concept. Put it on my wish list for sure because of that.
I was watching the gameplay, and they were all like talking to the main character, and they're like, "Oh, I wish we were as popular and as famed as an artist as you," and you're like, "Oh, do I need to be better than I am?" But like at the same time, like, he's a cute little dog person, and like the world's really, really neat. But I learned about this because I was reading tutorials and blog posts about Game Maker Studio, and I was like, "Oh wow, this guy is making this really cool thing."
So now you'll be able to find out firsthand. Does it make the cut? Cool. It's going to make the cut, but it's more like, how interested will you be in? Like, do you enjoy it? And
well, this one is only on the PC and the Switch, so I may not get around to playing this one.
Well, worst case scenario, like, you could always attempt that, like the PC to TV connecting that people do lately.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, because I still have that PC back there that I bugged you about. Now I have it back in my house.
Yeah, so boom, you can hook up to the TV, run a Steam on it, and a controller, you're set.
I should be set. So maybe it will happen. But there's some other games that I'm going to play later this episode that might take up some of that time.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. All right, so what's your first track?
All right, so my first track is going to be... It's hard. I like all my tracks, so every track's going to be a trick. But this one is one of the two from this game. I feel like the second one's going to probably come at the end of the episode because I want to hear them both, or maybe another episode. We'll see. But this is from the game Psychonauts 2. And the track is the boss theme from the Comptons cookoff stage. And the composer is Peter McConnell. Welcome back. You're listening to the boss theme from the Comptons cookoff stage from the game Psychonauts 2, composed by Peter McConnell. So, first of all, I love this blasted track.
That's great. It's a grungy track.
Very grungy.
Yeah.
And here's an interesting tidbit about this, and then I'll get into why I picked the track specifically. And that's that this track sounds like nothing else in the game. Like, no other track in the game comes out like this one does. And even when I heard it in the game, like, it was completely unexpected by me. But this level and this track perfectly encapsulates so much of what I like about Psychonauts as a whole. So, for those who aren't familiar with, like, well, I said a little bit of a preamble here. So there were 3 games that were released this year, or were released in 2021, that were like big games Pernell really wanted for years, and they all happened to release in the same year. There was Neo: The World Ends With You,
Right.
Shin Megami Tensei 5.
Yeah, big one.
And
we're still playing that.
I'm still playing that. It's going to be a long time. And Psychonauts 2, a game that I've been waiting for a sequel for since 2005 or 2004. And this game delivers on all levels. This particular stage, you have to go into the mind, which, for the record, I love the fact that this game has an entire arc devoted to, like, getting consent to enter someone's mind. Ooh. Like, it's just unexpected and wholesome. I loved it. The entire game is friggin' wholesome. You go into the mind of a guy who is a former Psychonaut lead, and he has this issue where he can't deal with too much noise. Like, he's crippled by the idea of having to make decisions and dealing with too much at once. So you enter his mind to see if you can help him out. And when you go inside of his mind, you end up on a cooking show. And the judge and the host are all puppets. They're all animal puppets. Goats, and actually they're all goats. Finger puppet goats. And the idea is that the guy is the contestant on the show, and he has to prepare a bunch of dishes for the show, and he's too nervous and he can't handle it. So the main character, Raz, is like, I'll help you do it. So you're running around this massive cooking stage, picking up sentient food and cooking it. Like, it's like you gotta take this pig and take him to the pig chopper, and the pig chopper is an actual giant pig with an actual thing you have to activate, and the pig can talk. He's like, this is kind of weird, I gotta say, because he's a pig chopping up a pig, and it's like the eggs, I gotta boil the egg, and the pig's like, I've been ready for this, I can't wait, I'm so happy to get boiled. And it's like you're going through all this weird mass nonsense of, like, prepping this food, like you're skitching around, you're dodging blades, have to get to all the preparatory areas.
You said the word skitching.
I did, which you made a joke about earlier. This sounds like it's from Skitchin'.
This sounds like it's from Skitchin'. This music is straight up Skitchin'.
And you got to go through this, and each of these things are timed, but it's not like crippling time. Like, I was able to do it. I think I failed the last one once because I didn't realize it takes time to blend your fruit. Anyway, the dialogue across the entire level is hysterical. It's fun to prepare the food and get it ready and get it for the guests. But then, when you finish all the cooking segments, you enter the final round, which is Double Down, where they separate you from the other guy, and he has to cook the food. You have to give him the ingredients. But it's Psychonauts, and it's weird. So how does this play out? Well, the guy is behind stage cooking, and he needs you to get the ingredients. The ingredients come from the inside of the goat puppets. You're on this giant stage, and the goats are fighting you on the stage by, and I'm not making this up, they're throwing up and just, like, throwing crap at you, and it's like this weird chaotic mess that came out of nowhere, and you have to look and grab the ingredients out of all this madness and throw them into this, like...
So the puppet goats are throwing up at you, and you have to pick up what they're throwing up, and those are the ingredients.
Those are the ingredients, and you have to throw them out to the guy, and he's like, I don't know if I want to cook with this. And it's like, we don't have a choice in the matter.
So weird.
And then, when you make the dish, there's like 3 rounds for 3 goats. Once you get all the ingredients out to them, he cooks it, and it comes out. Then you have to run up to the plate and use your telekinesis powers to throw all the food at the goat's mouth and then smack it with the plate. And then he blows up. And then that's that. And then when you beat them all, the final puppet, like, pulls off, and it's the guy's hand. And it's like, it turns out, and, like, it's like an interesting metaphor where it's like the idea is, like, all the puppets were meant to represent other members of the Psychonauts team, and he never felt like he could measure up to them. He was always judging himself harshly in their eyes. But then in the end, the worst critic, his harshest critic, was himself, because he was controlling all of it. It's like
he was the one.
He was the puppet master of all the puppets.
All of it in his mind.
Yeah. And once he comes to grips with it, he's like, oh,
I love that.
And it was just amazing. Like, I smiled this entire level and the boss fight. Like, I had a genuine, like, this feels good. Like, this feels good to experience. And you might be hearing me say earlier, so like, they're throwing up and you got to collect it. I collect Garbage Pail Kids, all right? So let's get that out the way. But even still, like, it's not visceral in the sense where, like, oh, I can't. I have a weak.
Well, the game is
cartoony.
Kind of cartoony. It has that, like, light.
It's very light.
Anyway.
And it's wonderful.
So you recommend this game?
It's probably one of my favorite games, period, let alone this past year. Like, Psychonauts 1, I played it in 2004 or so. And even the things I could tell you about that were like, okay, they could have did this better or that better, it has stood the test of time as one of my all-time favorite video games. Like, over the last almost 18 years or so, it's been one of my favorite games that I'll recommend to anybody who likes platformers. And Psychonauts 2, in many ways, does it better. Like, you might say the worlds in 1 might have been better than the worlds in 2 or something like that.
But it's still,
it's up there.
It improves on everything.
Yes, like, it's a fantastic game, and I can't recommend it enough.
So we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to start our new little segment that we're going to bring back every once in a while. Okay, this sounds like The Price is Right.
Right? But it was so perfect. This is also from Psychonauts 2, by the way, but it was so fitting that this is the track we're using. So this segment is called Board Game Beats. And the idea is that whether it's a review copy provided to us by a manufacturer or a publisher, or we just have a game we want to talk about on the show, we'll ramble about the game on the show and give our take on it. This is a game that I was able to play recently that I look forward to playing with Rob and his wife at some point in the near future. And it's called The Night Cage. It was published by Smirk and Laughter Games, and it was created and designed by Christopher Ryan Chan, Chris McMahon, and Roswell Saunders. It's a surprisingly interesting game that I thought would be complicated, but it really isn't. The premise is you're on a grid, and the characters are on the game, basically all the players. The premise is you wake up and in a complete dark space. You don't know how you got there or why you're there, but you need to get out. So you have to find some keys and then get to a gate to unlock the gate. But here's the rub. The only that you can see with is a candle that your character has. A candle. And you can only see, it's like orthogonally.
Right, up, down, left, right.
Up, down, left, right. You can only see one space in each direction orthogonally of your character on the board. Mm-hmm. So when you move one space, you light the space around it, and everything that's no longer orthogonally next to you disappears. It's gone. So, as you're exploring this maze, trying to find these keys that will pop up when you step on them, they come out of a stack of tiles. So you step over, you pull the tile down, that's a room. Tile down, that's a room.
But when you leave that, when that space goes dark again, does the tile just get flipped over?
No, it goes away.
Oh, it just leaves.
Because that's the interesting in-game over mechanic. When you run out of tiles, if you haven't gotten out before you run out of tiles, game's over. You lost.
Oh, cool.
Now, sometimes you'll come... So the things you can come across are corridors, which is just moving around. There's like T-spaces, so it's like, left, right, and then out to the side. It's four-way intersections, and there's straight lines. Some of these have crumbles on them, which means if you step on it, the next turn, it collapses and becomes a hole. So if you don't get off of it, you sink.
So you can't hang out there.
Can't hang out there.
Yeah.
There are monsters. Now, monsters are a trip. The way they work is when you come across one, you'll lay the tile down, and this is the base monster is called a wax eater. Now, for those who are familiar with the game Adventures of Lolo, they function similar to Don Medusa in that it is a monster that also can see orthogonally in all four directions. Now, the moment it comes out, the moment someone is in its movement range, it triggers and it fires in all four directions.
Oh, okay.
So if there's a path that's connecting another player or you, they get hit. And if they get hit, you have to discard some tiles. So you don't want that to happen.
Right.
You also get flipped sideways. Your light goes out, which means now you can't even light the area around you. You can only step into a room blindly and hope for the best.
wax eaters because they're eating up your candles.
That's right.
Oh, that's cool.
And
I love this idea.
It's really awesome.
Yeah.
It's really awesome. And so you're in this scenario where you're like, okay, you can't see. The only way you can get relit is by another player walking up next to you and relighting your candle. So you might think, okay, well, clearly the obvious bet is to just stay together and look around. But that's a bad idea sometimes because you can't stand on the same space together, which means if you ever have to backtrack and someone's behind you, well, guess what? You're kind of screwed.
Oh, you're stuck. How many players does this hold up to?
Supports up to 5.
Ooh, that sounds cool.
And believe it or not, it sounds complicated, but it's not. Like, it's a really easy teach. Yeah. It flows well. I'm imagining it, how it plays out in my head, and it's just very simple laying the tile, almost like a dangerous Carcassonne. Yes,
yeah.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
This is co-op. The only hiccup it could have, which I think on my house rule, is that you could get that person who wants to be like the kingmaker, or the king, but the game master, telling everybody the optimal move.
Yeah,
and that was
co-op games always end up that way.
And there were a couple people I was playing with that did that.
Co-op games have the danger of ending up that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was rough because I was playing with some people and they were trying to pull that. I'm like, yo, stop. They're like, because to me, I think the fun of this is, well, for better or worse, because you don't want to lose, but it's like a horror movie in that someone might make a bad decision, right? In which case, like, oh no, the monster gods because you went left when you should have went right.
You have to play it out.
Got to play it out. So the one house rule I thought about doing would be like, you can only talk to each other if you're within like a few tiles of each other.
I like that, yeah.
So like you're basically wandering. And I think it's part of the fun because, again, I like the idea of being like, crap, I misstepped and I got killed, which means everybody died. So who died? Pernell killed the team, but that's a horror movie playing out on the board.
Oh, man.
As opposed to just somebody being like, hey, I'm going to yell across the house. Go over there. Like, eh.
So do you remember the publisher or the designer?
Smirk and Laughter Games was the publisher. And it's a good one. Like, I appreciate this was thankfully a game that they actually gave me to review. And I think I look forward to playing this with you guys.
I'm really looking forward to trying this one out. This sounds like a lot of fun.
And they also have other monsters that make the game even harder if you want to jam it up a bit more. Like there's a monster where he becomes like a massive pit. Like we're talking like 10 to 15 squares worth of pit. And it's like ridiculous.
Oh, that's awesome.
But like it's a really cool game. It's a really cool game.
Oh, wow. All right, well, we'll check that one out. I'll have links to all of that stuff on our website, rhythmandpixels.com. And now we're going to get on to our next track. Our next track is coming from a game that I saw that looked awesome. It is called Unsighted.
Oh, good pick!
You know this one?
I do. It's on my Pernell. You played some of it, but now you got to get the heck back to it because you have too many games list.
Well, I checked it out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it looks like a more methodical, cyberpunky, hyperlight drifter, but like really scary combat. I don't know. We'll get into it when we get back here, but we're listening to the game Unsighted. The composer is Fernanda Diaz, and the track is called The Light Manipulator. That was the light manipulator from the game Unsighted, composed by Fernanda Diaz.
Yeah, I want to boot this game up again now. That sounds really good.
That's really, really cool. Once I started to see some of the gameplay and read about the story, I was like, okay, I don't want to know more about it because I'm definitely playing this one this year.
Like, I can tell you right now, the only reason why aside from Overloaded in general, but the only real reason I didn't really stick hard with it is because, my issue when it comes to, like, decision-making in games where they kind of gate you, in a sense. Mm-hmm. This game has that, in the sense that the premise of the game, though I don't remember why your character is who she is, I do know that in this world, the inhabitants are all, like, kind of like robots, but they're all on borrowed time. And different amounts of borrowed time, mind you. So not every robot is the same.
Yeah. So the enemies are all on like a death timer. I know that.
Well, not the enemies. You're the people.
Oh,
like the citizens.
Oh.
So like you might meet a person in town, and the game pretty much tells you in 3 days their clock is up. And in 3 days when their clock is up, they go crazy. So now they are an enemy. You have to put them down.
Oh, interesting.
So you're trying to get through the game, but also try to save as many robots as possible. 'Cause I know there's a way you can kind of like give them more time. Like you can help them, but you can't. It's probably like a Persona-esque thing where you can save everybody, like kind of how you talk about how you can do all the social links, but you have to do it just right, or you have to do it in the optimal way to help as many as you can. But I suck. Because most people, the idea is you're supposed to play it and get the knack for it, maybe on a replay or two, be like, okay, now I have the optimal stream. I'm going to save everybody.
Right.
I generally only play games once, and I suck at not letting people go. I'm like, no, everyone has to live. And then when it's like, okay, who are you going to save? Well, I want to save everybody. But you don't know how to save everybody. Well, I'm just going to not play. I'll come back later. And then I just don't. So that's kind of what happened.
I'll come back to them. You come back and they're like, they're fighting you now. And you're like, oh, no.
No.
Yeah, so the world is kind of overtaken by robots, or there's like a robot like race that has taken over the world or something similar like that. And the humans are considered unsighted. Like, they don't want to see humans anymore. So I know that's where that comes from. And either you're fighting back or you're kind of working with them and trying to help them out. But I know that the gameplay it's top down. It's very, very dark and grim pixel art style. And the combat looks really, really intense. And it's very heavily focused on parrying enemy attacks.
I felt like there was a little bit of freneticness too that I could say resembled like crosscode, which I like a lot. So
this looks like a combination of all these things that I really, really like. And so I'm thinking this is going to be on my list of games to play this year.
Well, if that ends up happening, let me know, because that could be the excuse to say, I'm going to boot mine up and play it then.
Well, I mean, when I started playing Hyper Light Drifter, it just like grabbed my attention. I played it right through to the end, like almost immediately. And Crosscode was the same way, except that it didn't hold my attention while I was playing it, but I really wanted to play it. This one looks like one of those games I'm just going to start just getting into.
I feel like the big reason why this might help you more, this might work for you better than Crosscode, is that Crosscode is a lot of side quests and a lot of content, but it very slowly drip feeds new gameplay mechanics, and it's very easy to get bored of the same old.
Well, Crosscode was like, it's a metaphor for these online MMORPGs, but then you end up playing essentially an MMORPG by yourself. And I'm like, that's cool. I love that the world was enormous.
Yes, it was.
Huge, but difficult to explore because it was still two-dimensional. Beautiful, but difficult to explore. So something a little bit more contained, more of a linear story. I'm into this. This looks awesome. Unsighted looks really, really cool. And the soundtrack by Fernanda Diaz is awesome. It sounds so good.
Especially there's more tracks like this in the game.
Yeah, it looks. Yeah, I didn't pick the outlier this time around. It sounds really, really great. So I think you can get all of the music on Bandcamp as well if you search it out, which is great.
And Bandcamp and I are becoming good friends lately.
Oh man, every new soundtrack is just the artists are like, here you go,
which I appreciate.
It's all right there.
But I mean, if it's not, it's one thing if it's not on YouTube, but I feel like it should be available somewhere. Like, I hate the days where an OST would come out for a game. It's like, I love this music. Where can I listen to it? In the game. Okay, and where else? in the game.
Well, that's when you get the rips, because people are like, oh, well, if you can only get it in the game, then eventually someone's going to be able to rip it out of the game.
Unless it's an obscure or low access title, in which case no one's ripping it because it doesn't have enough buzz.
That's true. Actually, my next track is going to be that. Not that way, but similar. So, what's your next track?
Let me get this out of the way because it's going to be on the show. If it weren't, you'd ask me what the heck was wrong with me. So let's do it. This is from the game Shin Megami Tensei 5. It is one of the battle themes, one of the many battle themes. I believe it's called Power, though I've been having difficulty finding like an official name for this track. But it's composed by Ryota, Kozuka, and Toshiki Konishi. Welcome back. You're listening to the battle theme titled, I believe, Power, from the game Shin Megami Tensei 5 on the Switch, composed by Ryota, Kozuka, and Toshiki Konishi. So, this, well, again, it's anybody who listens to this show in any capacity knows that Megaton games are my jam. And as I mentioned earlier in the episode, I had been anticipating Shin Megami Tensei 5 for a long time. Now, you would think that being that it's a game I've been anticipating, I would have beaten it by now. You'd be wrong.
Because this is a Shin Megami Tensei game, so it's going to be a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I put it on hard mode like a goober, and I don't have a lot of time to play things. So, for example, we have a Discord chat for Shin Megami Tensei 5 where we generally talk about how our progress.
We made a whole channel for it.
And there's one of the members of the group beat the game in 62 hours. Like, okay, I'm done the game. I loved it. It took me 62 hours. I'm like, looked at my clock. I'm like, I'm at 40 hours, and I'm barely halfway. I'm not even halfway into it. And a lot of that probably comes from the fact that I'm on hard mode,
right.
And I don't grind. So, I don't walk in, I was actually talking to one of the members of the group. He's like, I got to grind for this. But I was like, don't do that. Don't do that. Though, of course, if they want to, that's their choice. But as a friend talking, I'm like, don't do that.
As your friend telling you, no. Because you told me, not to grind in Persona 5. You're like, just do it. Like any of the Persona games.
Yeah.
Actually, Persona 3, I came about it my own way. I'm like, I'm just going to boss rush until I die.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll grind, or then I'll do something else. And in Persona 5, you're like, just do that. Don't ever stop.
Don't stop.
Just go until you can.
That's right. Because with these games, the ideal, there's optimal play methods to get the most out of the game. And one of those, probably the most important one, is that levels don't matter all that much. What matters is alignments and skills, because you want to basically hit enemy weaknesses to steal their turn, or to steal more turns, while also negating and blocking their attacks to steal their turns.
Right, and that's similar in the Shin Megami Tensei world.
Even more so in this. To give you some context to this track and why I picked it, aside from the fact that it's friggin' awesome, is the fact that, so for those that remember, a couple weeks ago I had the whole COVID thing. I was standing in line waiting to get tested. The wait in the line was about 2 hours. I was outside and it was not warm. But I also didn't care, because I was fighting the boss at this trade store. His name is Fionn Mac Cumhail. It's like an Irish, or Celtic god. And The first, when I walked up on him, he ambushes you in the game. And the first round, he hit me and killed me. Like, one hit, he killed me, game was over. I was like, what the heck did I do wrong? So, I came back and fought him again. The fight took like 30 minutes. It came down to my very last turn. I took a photo of what the party looked like. It was decimated. Like, I went in and was like, okay, here's how I got to approach this guy. I know what he can do. Build a team that's specifically designed to counter what he can do. Right. So I had guys that can nullify his attacks. I had to figure out what they call Magatsui attacks, which is like a super attack that everyone can get when they earn it. I had to know how to counter that. I had to plan everything to the letter. Because you got to debuff too. In this game, in Megaton games, debuffing is extremely important.
Right.
Always keep them down. On hard mode is really important. Because like I said, first round, he one-hit KO'd my team because I wasn't playing smart. And the second time, I was like, I'm ready for this jerk. I came at him hard. And then I won. But I was in line like giddy, listening to this track loop over and over and over for 30 minutes. Didn't care because I love the track. It's so good and it gets you a pump. And it's like this level of like, it's the sort of thing like people like to say, why do you play games on hard so much, Pernell? Or it's like, I think we've had this chat with Ed a lot where he's like, I just like the game that lets me kind of cruise through the game.
Yeah.
And it's like, so why don't you, Pernell? Clearly you're a guy who doesn't have a lot of time, or you're playing too many games so you don't have time to play through everything. I'm like, well, because the thing that gets me happy with a game, one of the things that gets me really happy with certain games is that tension, that requirement to play optimally. Not a desire to play optimally, the requirement. And that if I don't play to a standard that requires thought, I'm going to lose.
So you like the challenge that puts you on that edge.
Yes, like right, I want to be able to say like I beat this boss because of good planning and strategizing. Mm-hmm. And when I say that, what I mean is if I don't do that, I would have died. Right. Which means there was weight to the play style. Now, there are games where I will put it on an easier setting. Like generally games where I don't feel strong in the genre, like an FPS, I can't play those on hard because I'm not good at FPS games. Yeah. Something like this, though, I can rock
absolutely.
it.
Yeah. Totally. I can see, like, I understand. Like, this is what you've grown up on. Mm-hmm. And so you want that extra challenge so that it gives you that adrenaline.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Another metaphor, because I love metaphors, it's like saying, if I spent my entire life eating spaghetti and meatballs, it's a comfort food for me, right? My mom made it all the time. But as I get older, I'm like, I like spaghetti and meatballs, but I've always eaten spaghetti and meatballs. I need to jazz this up. Let's get some expert level spaghetti and meatballs on my plate. So now I'm going to experiment with spices and seasonings. I got to make it that this spaghetti and meatballs dish is special.
Yeah, I'm going to make my own pasta.
That's right. Right. It's going to be special spaghetti and meatballs. So someone's like, why don't you just take the sauce and the noodles and put them in the pot and cook it? Like, I could do that, but I want this spaghetti and meatballs.
There's more to life.
Yes. I want the good stuff.
All right, so my final track is coming from a game that I saw advertised, looked interesting, and didn't realize that this came from the developer Heart Machine. This is Solar Ash, the creator of Hyper Light Drifter.
Oh, like the guy who's running really fast on the plane.
Yeah, that's right. Like on he runs.
It's like a weird astral plane, like it's dark purple
exactly.
and black.
I was like, not a plane, but yeah. This is called Solar Ash. The music, again, is by Disasterpeace. Soundtrack has not been released, so there's been a few ripped tracks online, but it came out in May last year. We're going to listen to the track Wretched Ray. It's music from the final boss from Solar Ash. This is Wretched Ray, the final boss music from Solar Ash, composed by Disasterpeace, developed by Heart Machine. So definitely a Disasterpeace track.
Mm-hmm.
So this one, it's got the similarities to Hyper Light Drifter is just the color palette. The characters look very similar, but as Hyper Light Drifter was a 2D, very 2D game, pixel art style.
Mm-hmm.
This is full 3D. It's a lot of platforming that's momentum based. So you're attacking and running and flying.
Oh, so you can fly?
Yeah, it's sort of like flying, like kind of jumping, flying.
Oh, okay.
But you're kind of like grinding on rails and on the sides of like buildings and stuff. So it's almost a lot. It looks, but I'm sure it doesn't feel like Jet Set Radio, like almost. It looks really, really neat. So you're constantly kind of flying forward. So you got that going on. And on top of all of that, the game is mainly based on boss battles. And the bosses are enormous, like Shadow of the Colossus.
Really?
Enormous, yeah.
Okay, now you got my attention.
Yeah, you're like from this other world, and your world, I think it's destroyed by these giant monsters, and they're attacking other planets, and so you're trying to go and warn and go to these other planets and trying to stop these monsters from destroying these other worlds.
And
So
basically prevent the fate of these planets. Prevent these planets from suffering the fate that your home did.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. But but again, the gameplay is really, really fast paced. It's very much like you have to keep jumping from place to place, and and fighting these enormous monsters, which look really, really cool. And the music by Disasterpeace means it's probably super moody and like really atmospheric, because it's Heart Machine again. It's all like really like bright purple and dark blue and super cool. So that's the kind of stuff I'm into.
And we were looking up earlier during the track play. This is on Windows and PS4, so it's accessible to both of us. But sadly, and I kind of surmise this is not on the Switch, so no portability for P.
So probably not going to play it.
No, I might.
Yeah.
I mean, this is me we're talking about. I'm just inundated with stuff. Yeah. I dream big and play light.
From what I've read, it's a much shorter experience, 7 to 8 hours.
And that's the sort of thing that likely will be the thing that I can get to, because I still intend to do 4 in February again. So maybe that would be a good one for that.
Okay, yeah.
Short games are the way you go on 4 in February.
4 in February. Maybe I'll join you.
Hey, you buying 4 games that take 2 hours apiece. You're in.
That may be. Maybe Untitled Goose Game. I certainly did that one pretty quickly.
Yeah, I heard that game's like surprisingly short unless you do post game, and even then it's only like maybe another 2 hours added to it.
I'm not sure if I did the post game on that. There was like the post game of Untitled Goose Game was like, because each stage or each like section is like a list of missions you have to accomplish, and then it was like harder missions. It's just in the same stages. Mm-hmm. And I started to go through them, and I was like, nah, that's all right.
I've seen the ending. The goose didn't title the game, but he was happy, and that's enough for me.
I don't know if that goose is happy or not. Maybe he is happy that he made everyone else unhappy.
I think that's what geese do. That's their entire thriving force.
That's true. So I work at a building that's like right on the river, the Brandywine River in Delaware, and there's geese all over the place all the time, and the parking lot is high up on this hill, and then there's this like walkway of stairs that goes all the way down to the bottom where the river is, right up to the building. It's an old mill.
Mm-hmm.
And what the geese will do is they'll all like, and there's 20, 30, 40 of them sometimes, like so many geese, and they'll line up on the hill, and sometimes like they're walking across the walkway, and they will not stop. Like if you start walking close to them, they start flapping their wings.
Like, what are you doing?
They're like, back off, son.
You come to the wrong curb.
Like they love to just cause trouble.
They congregate. They poop all over your cars in the parking lots.
So I think what we used to. So Christy used to work with this one guy that we used to call him Jerkface, and what he would do is he would go up and like flap his arms and like scare them away, so that when the people showed up to work, they weren't be bullied by these geese. Geese are bullies.
But let's be real here. He's probably why all your cars got pooped on.
No, they get pooped on anyway. There's poop everywhere. Everywhere.
I just feel like geese would be vindictive enough to go, that's the guy who shunned us. Wait till he goes away. I wish we got something for him.
No, I have not seen geese on the car.
But did they key? They could have keyed your car.
Could have keyed my car. No, there's a lot of deer though. I've seen deer just like hanging out in the parking lot, and deer like way up on the hill just staring at me, especially when I work there like late at night and I have to leave, and like they're all just like suddenly there.
I actually kind of like that. It's almost like Children of the Corn but peaceful.
Yeah,
they get this weird staring contest with the deer, like who's going to flinch first. The answer is always the human, because deer can stand in one place dang near forever if you let them.
Oh yeah.
And nobody's got time for that. But I'll still try. I'll still be like, I got this 5 minutes left. I'm tired. I'm going home.
But they're so quiet. It's kind of creepy sometimes. I'm like, oh, there's deer. Because especially at night, I realize that like I'm on their territory. I'm on their turf. Like our building is kind of out there. It's not exactly a public place. It's very private. So there's a lot of wildlife, a lot of groundhogs.
Ooh, I like groundhogs.
Groundhogs are really cool.
As long as they're not on my property.
Now, he also gets, Jerkface also feeds them, and what they do is they crawl out off the side.
But you can feed groundhogs?
You shouldn't.
What are you bringing them to feed them?
He feeds them like some kind of like, you call it groundhog chow, but I think it's for dogs.
That's like
yeah,
go on Amazon, groundhog chow.
But they're so fat. They're
precious. Like I said, if it's not my property, I love them. I love them so much. If it's my property, go the heck away. Like
we did find a turtle once. The turtle was enormous. It must have been like 50, 60 years old. It was so big.
Turtles are also
huge.
Turtle. They've always been like a favorite animal. That's why I like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles so much as a kid, because I always liked turtles even then. So I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah, turtles are really cool.
But like, fun factoid about me, the times where I generally came closest to getting into weird car accidents on the highway, it's because of deer. And it's not because I almost hit the deer. It's because I stopped to look at the deer on an interstate going 80 miles an hour. Oh, deer!
There was one time I was driving home from work, and I was at that intersection, the 202 turns into Wilson.
Yeah.
There's the Acme there. And there was a huge box turtle just crossing the road.
And that would freak me out, because someone's got to stop and get him out of the road.
Yeah, it was in the summertime, so and it wasn't going to make it, and there was cars going behind me. So it's like 2-3 lanes. So I kind of came to the stoplight while it was still green, and I went perpendicular, so people couldn't pass.
Were they honking at you?
Oh, they were pissed, and I was like, "Come on," because you're not supposed to touch these things, and it was really hot out, and so I was like, sort of like.
Come on.
Shushing it. I'm waiting for it to go. And then when I finally got to the other side, I left. But
you were getting in the car, that one guy was clapping, and like 5 other guys were throwing tomatoes at you. Like, get out!
But it's like that's the situation where someone's not going to stop if someone's not paying attention. And
then they hit it, and then everybody else is like, "Yeah, I'm gonna hit it too."
Well, I mean, I was on the road, so that's what got me worried.
Because that's what people do. Like, it always makes me sad. Like when I'm driving and I see roadkill on the road, because what that implies to me is that someone. And I genuinely feel this. It's more often intentional than accidental. When you see roadkill on the road, it's more likely someone was like, get out of the way.
Into it, yeah. There's a lot of deer that I find. I mean, deer, they just jump out sometimes.
Yeah, deer is another story, though, because they're fast, and they blitz out, and then they stop for some reason. Deer is a thing where they could technically outpace the car, but they actually stop their momentum to look at the car because the lights freak them out.
Yeah, so fortunately, that's never happened to me. Brad hit one, and it like totaled his car.
Oh, they ruined cars.
He was like, he was really lucky to come away from that accident.
The deer are... I genuinely question the muscular fortitude of a deer because they take out fast cars. You don't move the deer stops your car.
We've seen deer in this neighborhood, which is crazy.
Oh, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, there's tons of trees around here. I could totally see deer. I mean, there's deer near me sometimes.
Ooh, I saw a blue heron at the creek.
Oh, I love when I don't understand the ecosystem here in the sense that, like, I have seen them before.
Yeah.
But I've questioned if it was the right bird because, again, it's like, this is an urban area. Why is there a heron there?
Well, they definitely live at the Brandywine Park area, which is in the middle of the city. And so I've seen them there a lot, but like they're kind of rare enough. You still don't see it, but when you see
I've literally seen them looking out my door.
Oh, really?
Like I'll be standing at my door. There's a heron.
I believe it because there's that creek outside.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. I'm like, wow, it's a heron. And I get really geeked about it. Foxes, deer.
Yeah.
And like the deer always freak me out. 'Cause I'm like, this is too close to highways and roads for deer to be hanging up. But then again, they'll be on the interstate.
Yeah, I see a lot of foxes when I'm running in the morning. That's always really cool. A little Delaware wildlife for you. There's a lot of cool wildlife out here.
A lot of animals.
Okay, so anyway, that was Solar Ash. I'm gonna play it this year. You should play it too. All right, what's your next track?
So, my last track is not a sneeze. It's actually from a game that I had trouble choosing a track from because it's one of those games where most of the music is atmospheric. But again, this is more so about the games and the music that's in them, not these are game tracks I want to play. So I found my most fitting and still good sounding track from this game, and this is going to be it. It's from the game Returnal on the PlayStation 5. Is probably the game that I would tell people would be this game that would sell me on the system as an exclusive. Note exclusive. The track is titled Helios, and it's composed by Bobby Krlic, or Krlic, Krlic. Pronounce it how you want, but it's his name. Welcome back. You're listening to Helios from the game Returnal on the PlayStation 5, composed by Bobby Krlic. And so, yeah, this is a very like atmospheric, albeit heavy atmospheric piece, and that I have trouble choosing tracks like that for like a podcast of sorts because it's great for the game, but if you're not experiencing the actual environment that it plays in, you're like, what the heck?
Yeah, I mean, like, we focus on video game music, so if the game is fantastic, but, like, the music is fitting to the game but not good outside of the context, it's hard to, like, get into it, yeah. Yeah,
because, I'm listening to this and I'm like, okay, this is well-composed stuff, this is legit, but I'm like, I can't bop to it because it's not designed for bopping.
Yeah.
It's designed for mood.
Well, our last two tracks, definitely not bopping tracks, but very moody, very, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about Returnal. You said runs in this game? Is this like a roguelike?
Essentially, but so to add some context to the idea, because somebody hear roguelike and go, here we go again.
That is a roguelike.
Here we go.
Here we go again.
So House Marquee is a Sony studio that I only learned about from the PS4. I learned about on PS3 because they did Dead Nation. But they pretty much are in my opinion, a well-revered in-house developer, but they only generally release like 1 or 2 games per system gen. Like, they're not the most active, but I haven't played a bad game by them yet. They're always bangers. And Returnal is no exception. The interesting premise about this, there's only one character in the game, and it's you. Despite the fact that you see a lot. Your character is exploring an alien world. She crash lands on it, and you quickly come to realize that you're stuck in a time loop. And every time you die, you relive the crash, and you have to do it all over again. And you come across a number of corpses that provide information, and all those corpses are you.
Amazing.
All of your previous deaths, not ones you personally lived in the game, but you see all the buzz. Like, here's I'll read the log from my previous life, and this is what my log found out for me, or whatever. But it's a large, sprawling environment. So even though it's all roguelike randomly generated, it's big spaces. We're not talking Sheer and the Wanderer type, grids here. We're talking multi-layered, sprawling environments.
Wow. And
when enemies show up, it goes wild, because another thing House Marquee games are known for is manic combat, whether it be like large waves of enemies or bullet hell sprays. You're going to get it. And in the case of this game, it's definitely bullet hell. Like, enemies show up and they're hitting you with the very first enemy you see is hitting you with like waves of bullets. And you're like, crap, how do I dodge this in a 3D space? I'm used to doing this in the ship. But you get used to, you get like a booster jet, so you can like kind of jump and dash and stuff like that. And you're spraying with gunfire. You have like a main gun that has like a alternate fire method. And every once in a while you'll come across a room that might have a gun in the chest. You have to choose which is the better gun to take along, because you can't carry every gun. And they all have different firing methods and power levels and stuff. And you also occasionally find like different boons. Some of my favorite aspects about the game is like you'll find like a benefit, but when you pick it up for like 3 battles, you're cursed. So you have to deal with this flaw. But if you can survive, you can outlast the flaw, you get benefits from it.
Oh.
So it's like risk for reward gameplay. And some of those things can get rough, especially if you end up with like 3 at once. You're like, well, I can't dash. My gun shoots pea shots. And my health is slowly draining. This sucks. But if I can get through it, I get double health. And my gun fires rockets and like just random junk I'm making up in my head.
You said that this company does a few games per generation system. Like, what else have they done? Do you remember?
Yeah, the ones I remember off the top of my head are Dead Nation, Resogun, Nex Machina, I want to say it was.
That sounds familiar.
And that's actually all I'm remembering. I'm sure there's others, but that's all I'm remembering right now.
Yeah, Resogun's the only one that's ringing a bell for me.
Yeah, Resogun was great. Save the Last Human. That was like the big launch PS4 game, which is funny I said because it was like a quick downloadable game, and they're like, this game is still worth it. It's so fun.
Oh, that's right. It's the game that looked like Defender.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You scroll. It's like a circular loop that you scroll over. It's like a 2D scrolling, but it's a circular loop, and you have to find the humans and pick them up and take them to the escape pod.
It is exactly Defender.
It's so fun though. Like, it's a legitimately fun and frantic game. But yeah, like I only named a few games, admittedly, but nonetheless, I've never played a bad House Marquee game. Like this, I'm happy with this. And again, like I got the PS4 on like almost on luck because
I mean the PlayStation
PS5. I was like PS5 because I wasn't chasing them down because it was immediately hard to get.
You
and
knew it was going to be a pain.
It was going to be a pain, and I missed the pre-orders. I was like, I'll get one when I get one. And it just turned out that I had a friend who had one extra, and rather than hit me with like crazy marking, he's like, hey, if you cover the tax or whatever, you got it. So I had to pay extra because we don't have sales tax, but I had to pay the sales tax for it. So I got it, and I bought Returnal and like Resident Evil Village. Resident Evil Village is still on the shelf. I intend to play it, darn it.
Yeah.
But I just haven't yet. But I still wouldn't have counted that compared to Returnal because, again, Resident Evil Village is one of those previous gen plus current gen games. Like, you could play it on a PS4 or an Xbox One.
Right, but Returnal is only PlayStation 5.
Only PS5. And despite having other games for the system since then, including some exclusives like Ratchet and Clank or whatever, I still feel like Returnal was the one that made me go, yeah, this was worth having the system for. Not breaking your neck and paying $800 for the freaking thing like some people were doing. Why are you doing that, by the way? But enough to say, if I'm going to get a system at launch or near launch, this is a game that makes me feel, okay, I'm happy to have this machine. It's not collecting dust on my shelf. This is a good game for that. It's just not easy. It's a hard game.
Now, we talked about earlier how the systems now, they may not necessarily need to have a new system. You know, Sony may not necessarily have needed to create a new system. So, in the past, I've been like, oh well, you have the system now. 2-3 years from now, it's going to have an enormous library of games. I don't know what that looks like.
I'm in the same boat now because right now, given the current state of the economy and the supply chain issues and the like, Sony announced today or yesterday of recording, not the episode's release, that they are actually going to go back to making PS4s. Yeah. Because they need market share and they don't have enough PS5s and, to a lesser extent, PS5 games to justify their business right now.
Yeah, the game development to the game hardware, it's reached this point now where, like, it's just, where do you go?
And don't get me wrong, like I feel like if things get worked out, if things get worked out, they would probably end up getting back on track. Because what ends up happening with this stuff is that even if the system itself isn't fully required on the power scope to handle the game, all that matters is they're putting games on it.
Yeah, and they'll phase out the 4.
Yeah, games that would have been on the 4 will just be on the 5. Whether or not they needed the 5 to run it is irrelevant. But right now, due to the fact that systems aren't coming out like they could because of supply chain stuff, they have to keep the old gen flowing so people can keep giving them money. So this is an environment, I think, that is fairly unprecedented from this perspective. Like, Xbox doesn't have this problem because for the most part, they've been doing it so that most of their games have been able to be played on both. Like, they've accepted that many of their games are just going to be performance enhanced on the newer
system.
Sony
was starting to move everything into the new one.
Not even starting. Their games were just like this. So the idea would be like, remember I mentioned Resident Evil Village, right? So Resident Evil Village, you could either buy it on the PS4 or the PS5. But by that same token, if you bought Resident, and whoever's listening, if they're like, no, Pernell, you're full of garbage on the Xbox, let me know, because I may be misinterpreting this. But Xbox, they have it so that it'll be like a Series X game, but it's like compatible with like the 360 or the Xbox One or whatever. So you put the disc in and it just runs based off of the console you're putting it into. Okay. Like, I admit I don't own a one yet, Xbox Series X rather, because I'm really trying to get one now, but I'm only going to buy it at Target because I have a stupid amount of store credit at Target, like a stupid amount.
So they're making their games not necessarily backwards compatible, but essentially like it works on a computer. Which computer do you have?
Exactly. Yeah. If you have this system, it runs way better. But if you have this system, it still runs. It's just not optimized in the same way for it. So, like, to me, I think that's smart because it's essentially saying we didn't block ourselves into a corner.
It is a very PC mentality, like computer mentality, which makes sense coming from Microsoft, right?
Yeah. Now, whether or not they'll maintain that long term, hard to say. Because eventually, I feel like they will eventually start making this. These games only run on Series X because it's not. We can't even optimize this to play on the old system. It's only going to run here. But for now, it's smart because they did officially stop making Xboxes recently. Like I think that got announced today too. Like Xbox One is done. Or maybe they announced it, but it was announced earlier, but they made it public today.
And now they're making Series X.
Only the Series X and the Series S, which I hate that distinction.
Their naming, it makes no sense.
It's
to me.
stupid.
They should. I mean, even if they used letters,
the letters don't mean anything. What does Series X actually refer to versus Series S?
I mean, if they went alphabetical, that would have been great. If it was like Xbox, then Y box, then Z box.
But then they'd have like AA box. I don't know. They'd have to start over. Like Xbox was fun. Xbox. The thing is, like the optimal thing is like numerics. Like the larger number is the better machine.
Right.
Right. But of course, it's okay if you come up with different names if you want to run. Like that's what Nintendo does, like Switch and GameCube or whatever. But PlayStation had it right where they just it's going to number it. It's the bigger number.
Yeah. If Microsoft started naming things entirely, if they didn't call it Xbox something else, they just called it what else would they call it? They would call it the micro.
Or their code names. That's the thing that irks me the most. You hear about these code names they have for these systems. It's like, okay, the code name sounds cool. And they finally release the game system. It's like, no, it's Series X. Like, go with Centaur. This wasn't the actual one. I don't remember what the actual code name was anymore. But it could have been Scorpio. I think Scorpio was one of theirs. Yeah. It's okay, imagine if the system was called the Xbox Scorpio. Okay, where do you play? I'm playing it's on Scorpio. I like Scorpio. It's a good system. Versus, okay, it's on the Series X, but I could get the Series S or the Xbox One, or the Xbox One X.
For me, I haven't really been following, so I don't know what any of these things are.
And everything I just named is a real name they've used. And Xbox One X. Who came up with that?
And so if I were to buy a new system, I'd be like, yeah, the Xbox One. That's the newest thing, right?
Right.
And I would be wrong.
You would be wrong.
I don't know. It's all confusing to me. We're going to get into the bonus round.
Bonus round? Why not just call it the bonus round?
You know what? It's confusing because this isn't really a bonus round. It's not a traditional bonus round. Pernell, a traditional bonus round has
an authentic one.
Has 4 cheeses, 2 layers of meat.
Oh yeah. That spicy tomato sauce, not that weak stuff.
And never-ending breadsticks. You just keep eating them.
Say what you want. I love those. I love endless breadsticks.
Now, a bonus round is where we play covers and remixes and arrangements based on our theme, but we're playing a lot of new music, music from a lot of new games. So there's not a lot of fan-generated content related to this stuff. There's no remixes and covers. So we're going to play some more games, right?
That's right.
All right. So I found a game called Everhood. Have you seen this thing?
Everhood. I feel like I did. But I'm maybe confusing with some other games that start with the word ever.
There's a lot of evers out there. So this is a game called Everhood. It is a 2D adventure game, except that it's essentially all bosses, but the bosses are all rhythm-based. And it's kind of like a dodge 'em up, like Shapes and Beats, except that you're a person and you're dodging the attacks from the enemies. And every boss has its own music. Enormous soundtrack.
I'm looking this up.
Music by Chris Nordgren. We're going to listen to the track Ballistic from the game Everhood. And we're back here listening to Ballistic from the game Everhood, composed by Chris Nordgren.
And Pernell's buying it when he gets home.
Yeah, this game looks really neat. So it's just a series, it's just almost all boss battles, but all the boss battles are dodge 'em up style, but like not all the same style. Some of them come down at you in like Guitar Hero lanes. You have to dodge them that way. Some of them is like a bullet hell style and it's top down and you have to dodge bullets from the enemies, but everything is coming at you to the rhythm of the music.
And the story from the Nintendo page, all it says is you're a wooden doll whose arm has been stolen by a blue gnome. That's the story.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know what that means.
It looks really neat, like really interesting and off the wall, wacky, but also kind of dark. But like because it's rhythm based, you know, it's going to be up our alleys a little bit more.
I swear, it's like there's something about like I think it's just because maybe it's like the scope of the cost, or maybe it's because there's more minds at work, but they're not inhibited by like corporate garbage. But indie games have this knack for just coming up with some weird, bizarre stuff that just makes you want to try it. Like visually, you might be like, oh, this doesn't look appealing to me in screenshots, and it ends up looking better when you're playing it. But you're reading about what it is or the concepts, like that doesn't make any friggin' sense. I want it.
Well, the market is so big. Like the number of players is so big right now today. That means that all of these niche games and genres have a place.
Mm-hmm.
If it was so much smaller, like back in the day where it was like you have Nintendo, you play Mario, you have Genesis, you play Sonic. Like that's all you had. But now there's so many people of all ages and playing games, and so there's all this room. Like a developer can make a game like Everhood and survive.
I think there's also one other component I think too, though I might not be 100% on point with this, and that is it falls back onto like I talk about how like the pluses and minuses of like social media and the internet. This would be a plus in that due to the fact that you don't have to worry about being advertised in a magazine anymore.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about getting a billboard anymore.
Right.
Your game is out there. And once it's out there, it could get blogged about, it could get podcasted about, it could be exposed in any number of ways that don't have to cost you a dime.
Yeah, you can put in your own effort and do your own marketing, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more options out there for anybody to do this.
And with review codes, like I think about that too, because that's another way to get buzz, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, if a reviewer takes a code and they play it and they like it enough, they'll talk about it. So back in the old days, if you were to do a review stream, you're like, okay, you got Nintendo Power, you have Electronic Gaming Monthly, you got GamePro and extra things. You had to get these guys, get their addresses, mail them copies of your game in the postal system.
Yeah.
Now you're just like, here's a code, download it. And you got to pay obviously like Nintendo or whatever to like allow you to do that. Like they give you a certain number of like review codes to distribute. But I wager that's still leaps and bounds more affordable than just like shipping a bunch of games out to people on the postal system after manufacturing them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, now everything's digital.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to worry about that.
It's much easier for them to get their game out there to people to check it out and get more exposure, more dialogue streaming about it, because you might want to, I know it's like a little bit taboo to do like how it comes up in the music. And it's like, oh, exposure, exposure. But like in the scope of this, I feel like exposure is actually that word of mouth, and gaming has this weird thing, and I'm living proof of that, where sometimes it's not even about playing the game, it's about dreaming of playing the game. So you'll be like, I want to play that at some point.
I know you're not alone in this too. So there's a lot of people out there like, oh, the idea of this, I'm excited about it, and they'll put money down on it.
Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to buy this. When are you playing it?
Yeah,
whatever.
After I finish Persona 5.
That's right.
All right, so what's your bonus round track? What are you going to go with?
So this one, I had to bring it up on this episode because I might be in the minority here. I don't know. Don't really care. But I feel like this game has no business being what it was for me. In that I described it as, well, I'll talk about the description when I get to the game description. But this comes from the game Dungeon Encounters on the Nintendo Switch. And the track is the battle theme for the Undulating Stands area, and it's composed by Nobuo Uematsu. Correction, this kind of fits into the bonus round because it's a cover done by Nobuo Uematsu, but it's actually March of the Dwarfs, composed by Edvard Grieg.
Oh, okay.
Welcome back. You were listening to the battle theme from the Undulating Sands area from the game Dungeon Encounters, released on the Nintendo Switch. I think it's also on like PS4 and Xbox as well. Composed by Nobuo, or covered by Nobuo Uematsu, but it was originally, like the original piece is March of the Dwarves, composed by Edvard Grieg. So, how do I describe Dungeon Encounters? Dungeon Encounters takes a number of the greatest people that have ever worked at Square Enix, including the guy who originally came up with the active battle system from like Final Fantasy forever. Like since Final Fantasy 4, it's been used in like almost all of their games and replicated in other games. And it has basically like Hiroyuki Ito, Hiroaki Kato, Ryoma Ito, and Nobuo Uematsu. So I look at this game as being the equivalent of Ryota, of Mr. Ito going up to them and saying, I want to make a game. And like, okay, well, we don't want to give you much for this game. Like, we respect you because you're revered here, but we don't want to get any money. So you can make a game, but we got
battle. It's just the characters' faces.
Yes. So, and I'm getting to that because I swear to God, this is what happened. It had to be like, okay, we revere you here. We respect you. We ain't giving you any money. So you can make a game. We're going to give you a $500 budget. Make it count.
Wow.
So he goes, okay, well, what will the map for the areas be? Grid paper. You're just going to walk around on squares. What's the map layout look like? Literally the squares. There's no, like, art or anything.
Some of the squares have numbers on them, and I think those numbers have items you can pick up.
They're events. Like, so the numbers are everything. Like, if it's a staircase, it's 02 or 01.
Oh, my gosh.
If it's a warp, it's OE. If it's a battle, it's a black number ranging from 01 to, like, AD or QF or something. Like, it's all, like, tabletop RPG visuals. Battles are character portraits side by side, and the enemy portraits on the other side, and ATB bars moving with the music playing, and you select the attack based on the equipment you have on. You can earn abilities that can be found, and they're not exclusive to the characters. The abilities are like party based, and you can use them if you got ability points for them. Like it's as bare bones as it gets, and the music is literally, in my opinion, this is a joke but also serious. It's Nobuo Uematsu in his garage saying, I like classical music, let me riff on this for a bit. And his wife's like, honey, it's time for dinner. It's like, hang on a minute, I got one more track to cut.
I gotta do Flight of the Bumblebee next.
I gotta Flight of the Bumblebee. Done. Okay, time to eat dinner. Like, it is like just expert level amateurism.
Yeah, well, it's stripped down. It's everything stripped down to its core elements, trying to be done as cleanly as possible.
And it's still addictive. Like that's a large part of why it's on my list. To me, this game proves that the mechanics, the core mechanics, are all you really need in a truly good game. Everything else is just butter on the roll. Like, yes, this is delicious bread, but
that's my favorite metaphor tonight. Everything else is just butter on the roll.
It is. Like, because, I mean, I'm playing this game, and if you were to come up to me and watch me play the game and like, so this looks boring. I'm like, yeah, it does look boring, doesn't it? But I'm already like 25 hours into it. Like, I really like this game. And if you were to say, Pernell, do you recommend this game to me? I'm going to go, I don't know if I feel comfortable recommending it to you. Because, again, it's...
do you like these things? Do you really like these things?
Do you really like these things?
Do you like these things despite everything else?
Mm-hmm.
Then maybe.
And the game is hard, too. Like, you get, like, for example, eventually... Like the first 10 floors, it's like, okay, this is rough, but I can roll with this. And the idea is you want to map every tile on a floor because if you map it out, you get ability points, which lets you equip more abilities when you find them in the dungeons. But the first few floors, it's like, okay, no problem, I got this. Then as you get further in, the floors get bigger. So now a floor can have like 1,000 tiles on it. You got to run over all of them. It's quicker than it sounds, but it's still time. And the enemies, they start coming up with some really jerk bag attacks. Like, so you have a armor level, a physical armor level, a magical armor level, and then your hit points. Enemies do too. If you knock out all of the physical or the magic, and then attack with that type of attack again, you hit the hit points. At the end of every battle, you regenerate all of your armor points, but not your hit points. So your goal is to push through. and not let your health get attacked.
That's a great mechanic.
And at first, you're like, okay, I can manage this, no problem. And then you start finding jerkbags, like the zombies, who can attack you and just go right to your health and drop it to 1. So, yeah, you're still alive, but if any of your armor gets cut, you're going to probably die.
So you're like a big bag of blood.
in a suit of armor.
In a suit of armor.
You can get petrified. If you get petrified, armor levels, health doesn't matter. If it connects, you're petrified. And if it happens, you have to leave the party member on the tile they got petrified on because you can't drag them. So they're stuck there, and you have to find a place in the dungeon, input the coordinates of where the person was left to unstone them, then go get them. If you die on a space, as in you get a party wipe, they send you back to the home base on the top of the dungeon. You have to bring a new party group down. Keeping in mind, you have a limited number of people. You start with a certain batch of people, like 7 or 8 people, and you can find some as you're exploring the dungeon that are wandering. If all of your party members die, your game is done, as in the file is done, and you gotta start again. And if that group dies, you have to go to your home base group, take another group down, and retrieve the old party. Now, here's where it gets more bullcrap. If you had a party of 4, all 4 die, you can only have a max group of 4.
Right.
So if you go down there, you got to have space in your party to bring them back up.
So there's 4 down there. You got to do like 2 at a time or 1 at a time.
Yep. It's cruelty, and yet it also makes thematic sense. Because when you really lay it on the table, how is it going to get back?
I wonder if they laid all these things out and they said, these are all the things we want to include. And they're like, what would it take to implement it? Well, if we were to do it graphically, it would take another 20 years. And they're like, no. I want to do this.
We got 10 minutes.
No. We're shipping next week.
Well, we got some graph paper.
Yeah.
we can scan it.
Well, for more information on the bonus round, you can go to rhythmandpixels.com. And we'll have links to all of these games and artists' Bandcamps and SoundClouds and where you can buy the music and support the artists. All right, thanks for joining us on episode 31-2 of Rhythm and Pixels. Our top games or most interesting or want to play games of 2021. Our last year.
I'm actually slightly sad that we already chose the topic for the Patreon, because when I was on my way over here to record this episode, I was like, I really wonder what the patrons' top games of 2021 were. But we already have the Patreon episode topic planned out, so crap, can't do it twice. But I am genuinely curious about what other people chose for this. But it was a surprise. Oh, I can't even use that statement anymore, because like a lot of articles will be written by Kotaku and they're like, oh man, this was the best game year of games yet, or you won't believe what's coming next year. Like,
top
newsflash,
10 games that you missed of 2021.
It's like, yeah, but like newsflash, every year short of a collapse in the industry is a good year for games now, because the industry has exploded and has unveiled a list, like we talked about earlier. Like, there's so much access to development now and getting your games out there that short of a crash, there will never be lacking for good games to play anymore. And I state that confidently. Like, there will always be a fantastic year for games.
Yes, tools are available enough for people like me to dabble, and then other people to dabble and then create something incredible that gets released out into the
And the game that you chose the music from right here is a prime example of
we're
that.
listening to music from Unpacking by Jeff Van Dyke.
Now, I'm not 100% accurate on this. I'm admit that. I'm basing this off of something I read like a month or two ago. But this game was like a passion project of like a husband and wife pair. And they went in some ridiculously, in-depth, intricate detail to model every physical object that you can use in this game. Because the idea behind this game is a person is living their life. Like, they're moving from room to room, house to house, and their life is being shaped as they move. And every time they do, they have to pack and unpack everything they own. And you, as the player, have to unpack their belongings and put them where they belong in the home. Where do they belong? You figure it out.
Wherever it fits.
Wherever it fits.
Yeah, but it's like they're going to college, or then they get married, and then they have children, and you have to like kind of unpack and pack and unpack and pack all these different parts of their lives.
And it's weird because at first when I heard about this game, I was like, why in the heck would anybody want this? But then a few things happened. One, I remembered that one of my favorite games of 2020 was Wilma's Warehouse. And the entire premise of that game was organizing stuff in a warehouse. And I didn't expect that game to click either. And then I ended up falling in love with it. So I was like, okay, I realized that this could still work. Yeah. I've already broken that mold. Second thing was, as you're hearing right now, the music feels really good. It feels really good.
Well, Jeff Van Dyke has done a lot of big games, and games that you would know too. Assault Cactus.
Oh, he's Assault Android Cactus?
Assault Android Cactus.
Fantastic OST for that game.
Along with some other stuff like Rome, Total War, and some other big RTS type titles.
Oh, enough of that. None of that. Assault Android Cactus.
Yeah, I was like, that's the
great
one,
music.
That's the one you're going to know.
But and then the other thing about this that's especially cool and is weird in that this would be it, is that the game tells a story, but it's not a story you'd expect coming in because, again, this person is moving from place to place and you're unpacking their belongings. So you might be unpacking their 8-year-old self's possessions in their children's bedroom. And they might have, a bunch of stuffed animals and, cute little sundresses and stuff like that. But then when you move them again, they're like 18, you're going to college. And you might notice all those stuffed animals, with the exception of one, are gone. She got rid of all of her stuffed animals. And she changed her style of clothes. She doesn't wear sundresses and stuff anymore. Now she's wearing like grunge clothes. I'm making this up because, again, I don't remember to the letter what this person had in her house.
Yeah, but it's definitely...
Like, you watch the growth and the change in this person's life. You might see some momentum that she decides that she had from one situation, but when she changed, she moved on. She's like, I don't really want that anymore. She gets rid of it. Or she adds new things to her life. When she gets married, now you're unpacking things that are owned by two different people. So now you got to put it in the spaces. You want to separate. So she gets her cabinet, he gets this cabinet, or she gets this cabinet, her roommate gets this cabinet. And then it's just wild because, again, everything isn't even... There's not like a thing that's saying you have to put this right there. You have to put this right there. You're putting it where you believe it belongs. And while the game does have an idea of where stuff should go, it's not telling you where it should go, which means there's a ton of answers to everything. You might get a player who's extremely articulate with how they organize things. So they might have things neatly folded and pressed in this very specific drawer. All the shorts go in this drawer, all the shirts go in this drawer, but everything else goes in the little box in the corner. Whereas me, I'm like, shirts and pants. There you go. That's the shirt and pants cabinet.
Yeah.
And this is all the everything. All the shorts and t-shirts are all in one drawer because I'm just going to take them out together and wear it anyway. Yeah. It's just an amazing idea.
It is. It's
that at 20 years ago, you wouldn't see a game called Unpacking. It wouldn't exist because no one in their right mind would have put the money up to say, let's make this game. But today, this can exist on a budget that's affordable by the developer. Mm-hmm. They can put it out there on Steam for the world to see. And it can speak for itself. It can make its own way. People can get a chance to say, a game where you're unpacking clothes. That sounds like a lark. I'll give it a try. And it becomes what it became, which is an indie darling. People love unpacking.
Yeah, it looks amazing. This is definitely on my list. Some other honorable mentions on my list are The Record of Lotus War, Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth.
Good choice. That game is great.
Looks awesome. And then also Deathloop.
Also interesting. That one's weird in the sense that, are you familiar with the general premise, like what you're trying to do?
And I know that the music's by Tom Salta.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks really neat.
The idea is that you're, like I mentioned, I think we had another game in this episode did the same thing. You're in a time loop, like Returnal. You're on an island where it's like a group of cultists. And the idea is that they want to just relive the same day over and over because they're freaking bonkers in that way. And your guy is there to try to end the loop. Now, the only way you can end the loop is by defeating 8 key targets on the island in the same day. Now, initially, it's impossible. You can't. But if you defeat one, you'll get an ability from that you can carry on with you to subsequent days, and you start figuring things out. So eventually you have to come up with this optimal path to kill all 8 generals in one day using the abilities you gain. But in addition to that, there's also an assassin. In addition to the normal enemies, there's also an assassin trying to stop you. It can either be computer AI or a human player that's dumped into your game to find and kill you.
Oh, interesting. So you could be the person dumped into someone else's game.
Trying to kill them. Stop them from completing ending the loop. And it's just wild because I played it. I have it at my house too. I bought it. I got a really good deal on it. But I also played it at the HPP house, like Hey Poor Player guy's house. He had it. So the idea is like when this person shows up to try to kill you, you don't know whether it's AI, at least I didn't at the time, whether it's AI or a human. If it's AI, it can still be tough, but you might be like, I can weed this out. But if it's a human, you're like, oh crap, they're shooting at me. What are they going to do next? You don't know what they're planning. If they're an actual person trying to kill you in a game
world. You can't
world.
guess how they're gonna move. Right?
And someone might be hearing this and go, "Oh, your Dark Souls did that ages ago. Get well, noob," or whatever. But the idea to me is like it's something different about Dark Souls. Is a very meticulous combat system. Like you see the guy. And sometimes they get this whole honorable thing where like they bow to you and everything, and everybody's like, it's like one physical combat. Deathloop is guns in a large space. You have a guy trying to snipe you from across the room. You don't even know he's out there. All of a sudden, a bullet just skims by your head. Like, oh crap, he's coming for me. Hey, you're trying to outrun them and figure out where they're at. It's a whole other feeling.
So yeah, you're selling me on that. Sounds cool. It's not PS5 only, right?
I don't know.
We'll find out. But that's definitely on my list. So those are my 3 honorable mentions, definitely. I almost got delit in Wonder Labyrinth today, but I was watching some gameplay and I was like, it's Symphony of the Night. I mean, she even moves like Symphony of the Night. So
only in the sense of it's Metroidvania, but it has like a Outland / Ikaruga gut vibe too.
That's
you
true.
Get those 2. Did you see about the part you get the wind spirit and the fire spirit? And one you absorb the bullets, or you can't absorb the bullets, and one powers you up, one devalues your other, or whatever like that. It's crazy.
And also the Lodos War. I haven't thought of Lodos War in literal years, which is really cool.
It actually amazed me to realize that there's still a fan base for it even today.
Yeah. But we should wrap up here. We're actually getting on to 2 hours on this episode, which is interesting.
Well, it's a gusher. Talking about games we like.
Well, if you would like to contact us, if you would like to have a track suggestion or a topic suggestion, or if you agree or disagree with any of our game suggestions from today's episode, send us an email.
rhythmandpixels@hotmail.com.
You can get a full track listing of this episode and access to all of our episodes at the website.
rhythmandpixels.com.
And we're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And we're also on YouTube, youtube.com/rhythmandpixels. We have a 24/7 8-bit and 16-bit radio station playing all day and all night long. That's generally what 24/7 means. I added some new visuals to the station, so go check that out. There's like some cool flashy stuff playing around in the background on the station. So I'm really proud of that. So check that out. If you want to support the show, you can subscribe or rate and review wherever you are listening to the show on, or you can go to Patreon, patreon.com/rhythmandpixels. As a member there, you get access to prequel episodes, you get access to monthly live stream episodes. You can get cool stuff like mugs and t-shirts and stickers. And we also like to thank all of our Patreon members at the end of every episode. I want to thank a new Patreon member, Kevin McKay. Thank you very, very much for supporting the show. And we want to thank Frankly Zappa, Kristen, Mike Myers, Alf Person, Fashion 8060, Alex the Messenger from a VGM Journey, Andreas Milberg, Brian Pitt, Cameron Werma, Kung Fu Carlito, Carlos from the Heroes 3 podcast, Chris Steenerson, Chris Weisner, a.k.a. Musashi219, Christopher Senstrom, Davey Cakes, David Taylor, Harold Howard, Justin Schneider from XVGM Radio, Michael Bridgewater from Forever Sound Version, Michael Jennings, Rage Cage, Reinhard Selkova, Sleepy S'more, Steve Miller, Taco, The Autistic Gamer 89, and Ed Wilson from the VG Embassy.
Embassy. And also, you got to put out there that, hey, Rage Cage is a one step closer.
That's right.
He's on his way.
Rage Cage is on his way to starting up his own podcast, and we're really looking forward to that.
That's right.
He can start his podcast, and then we can end ours. We should also say that Chris Steenerson, who has been a member of our Patreon for a long time, has a podcast episode that he's created called VG Jam, Video Game Jam, where him and a friend, they listen to a video game music piece and they try to compose original music inspired by that piece. So check that out. It's VG Jam! You can find that online on their website and wherever fine podcasts are delivered.
I love that I can describe it as being a delectable piece because it's actually VG Jam.
It's jam.
Bread and jam.
Yeah, their logo is a toaster with jam on the toast.
That's right.
Don't put the jam on the toast before you put it in the toaster, though.
Well, man, maybe if I want to be adventurous, maybe I will.
Well, thank you everybody for your continued support of our show. We greatly appreciate it. We will announce our live stream episode coming up soon. Probably it's probably going to be next week, next Thursday, the 27th, and it'll be all over our social media and our website and stuff. The topic and the date. So we'll see you then.
So we mentioned it. I think we just re-mentioned it here just because we remember. I think I remember. It was like, it was the unexpected multiplayer again. So, but for the patrons. So I'm trying to think, should we come up with a separate thing in case someone's like, I have no idea what the heck you guys mean? Or maybe, you know what? It's unexpected multiplayer.
Challenge.
But it's a challenge. But in the event that you are like, I can't think of anything, because I'll admit it was hard for us too. Favorite multiplayer is also workable, but pursue unexpected multiplayer. That's the intention of it.
Yeah. Pursue it.
Follow your dreams.
Put a little butter back on that biscuit. All right, we'll see you next week with a new episode of Rhythm and Pixels. My name is Rob Nichols.
And I'm Pernell.
Have a safe week.
And remember, this is definitely something I've said in the past, but it's perfectly fitting for this episode topic in that, video games are coming out a dime a dozen now. There's so freaking many, and they hit all walks of life, and they all take various amounts of time to complete. What I'm going by here is that ain't no way in the world anyone's going to beat every game that comes out every year. You're not going to experience them all. It's freaking impossible. So, what does that mean? It means not everybody's game of the year or games of the year are going to be the same. They are very diverse. And what that ends up entailing is sometimes you're not going to hear the one you want to have described. And that goes for me too. Sometimes I'm like, what is your favorite game? I'm like, I don't think you're talking about. I ain't played that game before in my life. Or, you don't like this game. But guess what? Maybe they never played the game that I think is great because they didn't know it existed or they didn't have the time for it. Could be a number of reasons. But that's all the more reason for you to express it to others. Like, this is a game I liked. Tell us about the game. What is it about the game you liked? Is it cool? Is the music great? Because sometimes it's not just about playing the game, especially when there's no time for every game. It's about sharing the experience with other people so they can at least experience it vicariously through you. And vice versa. It's fun to tell people about stuff you've played and liked. That's another way to experience something you've already played through. In fact, that's, for me, some ways, that's sometimes the best way to experience a game is to talk about something I've already done. It just feels great. As you can hopefully hear in the show proper.
Treat that like social experience, right?
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
So tell us what your favorite games were.